Hey, friends, welcome back to the Christian Music Industry Podcast. I am here today with a special guest in the studio, and she is a proof that God's timing is always worth the wait. For over 25 years, singer-songwriter and worship leader Jaime Jamgochian has navigated the highs and lows of the music industry and life with unshakable perseverance. A classically trained pianist and vocalist who studied at Berklee College of Music, which sounds really intimidating.
Studied jazz there. Went from classical to jazz.
Jaime gave her life to Christ at 21 and quickly made her mark in Christian music, signing with Centricity Music, where I actually used to work. So that's a fun fact. We never got to work together there, and garnered a #1 hit for the song Hear My Worship. Yet her greatest testimony came later with a brutal battle with Lyme disease, threatening to end her ministry. And instead, God healed her, earned her a Dove nomination after 20 years in the Christian music industry, and reignited a calling to lead others into deeper surrender. So I'm really excited about just this conversation because we've had private conversations about, this topic, and I think everything that I've heard about you from people that know you, and also, just like what I've seen and heard, you're really passionate about just pouring into younger, artists and helping people in this industry, I guess, keep the main thing. That's kind of a cliche, I guess, but
it's a good way to say it.
I feel like, there's a lot I'm sure that you've seen change over the years being in this industry, but I would love to first hear from you on how did you even get started, and how did the whole signing of your first record deal happen?
I am still how am I here? How did this happen? Thanks for having me on your podcast. I remember when we connected over coffee, I was actually picking your brain about some industry stuff. And we just got going on these topics that we're very like-minded in. And so I'm glad we're finally having this conversation. But I laid down every music dream when I came to know Christ. I was 21. So grew up in a beautiful family, did not know the Lord. Music was kind of my life. I had really bad learning disabilities as a child. And piano just was the thing that came easy. It just clicked. And I could hear a song and do. And so music was all I kind of knew, band, jazz band, marching band, choir, auditions for shows and in shows, and worked with great producers in Boston as a young teen. And when I got to college, it's that drive, that rat race in a music school. Everybody's trying to, do the next thing, move to LA, move to New York, write a hit, work with so-and-so. And there's top industry people there teaching you. And I remember towards the end of my senior year being there's got to be more than this. And, I was studying jazz at the time. I was singing in bars, cruise lines. And when I came to faith, it was through Christian music. And I think that's when I discovered the power of music, the power, the anointing that a song, that a melody, that a lyric can carry, and how that can change a life. And that's my story. A friend gave me, I'm so old, Wisdom, this is embarrassing. A friend gave me a cassette tape.
That's where I grew up on.
Okay, we're the same age then. And it was a bootlegged, Forgive Us, Lord. And it had Shout to the Lord by Darlene Check. And I remember putting that in my dorm room in the presence of God. And I had never felt that. I mean, I loved all genres of music, but this was different. This was the tangible presence of God filling my dorm room. And this classmate had been telling me about Jesus. She had given me a Bible. I remember saying, should I put it under my pillow at night? She's like, why don't you read it? So it was the first time I was reading the Bible and falling in love with Jesus and who he is. And once I heard that music, something leapt in my spirit. And I remember thinking, I don't want to sing hopeless love songs anymore. I don't want to sing about dumb things. I mean, and this is not a slam to other genres because I know they're out there and they're great. This is just a personal conviction. And I just sense the Spirit of God, actually, this is what you were created to do. I was barely saved. I was such a new Christian. But I think that has carried me, that presence and hope and joy that I felt on that music, that was the moment I felt, this is what I feel like I'm created to do. So fast forward, I come to know the Lord and get involved in like the Berkeley Gospel Choir and learned about Amy Grant and, all these artists I then loved, Chris Tomlin, early days, Open the Eyes of My Heart, all that. And, or was that Paul Baloche?
Open the Eyes of Paul. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And like back in that, genre and that season. And the Lord was like, you're not going to LA. You're not going to New York. Do you trust me? And I'm like, yes. I mean, baby Christian would do anything. And I hope we still live that surrendered. I hope I still live that surrendered. And he said, you're going to Seattle. Now, I lived in Boston, grew up in Boston. Seattle, like that's as far possible as you can go.
Yeah.
So I get on the plane, I open my Bible and it literally falls right to as far as the east is from the west.
Oh, wow.
So far have your sins been removed from you. And I knew in that moment it was the start of a new season. And I just knew God was going to do something. Wow. Flew out there with nothing but a suitcase.
Wow.
And I interned at a big church that was going through like renewal, revival. I don't know if you remember back in like 99, early 2000s when there was just this hunger and fire for God, and his presence was so thick and real. And I was a part of a church community like that. I interned, kind of did like a Bible school thing. And they were like, aren't you the Berkeley grad? And I'm like, yeah, I went to music school. And they're like, can you play piano? I'm like, yeah. And so I can remember just joining the worship team. I knew Shout to the Lord, Open the Eyes of My Heart. And they were like, do you sing? I'm like, yeah, I sing a little. And that just started. But the thing I loved was serving the local church. And as an intern, you served in every area. I can remember cleaning bathrooms and just cleaning toilets and just worshiping the Lord and living in that space of, this is the greatest gift ever. Like God just being saved and singing to you and worshiping you, whether it's in a bathroom or on that platform or leading a small group of girls, teenage girls. And I think that is when I realized that my dreams were completely surrendered. And I thought I'd be at that church forever. I went on staff there as one of their worship leaders. And that's when I connected with Centricity Music. I was young. I was 24, 3 years into the Lord, writing my own songs now, leading them at that church, traveling locally to minister at events. And that's always been my heart, is just to lead people into God's presence, whether that's a song of hope that I'm offering to them or we're singing together in a corporate worship setting. And the owners of Centricity, that's kind of how it started. They were like, we want to start a label. I'm like, you do? That was a dream pre-Jesus. And they're like, we want to sign you. I'm like, you do? So I felt like God brought everything back in his way and in his time. And that's how Centricity was started. And I got to be their flagship artist. And they are so blessed. I mean, you've worked with some of their incredible artists, and that brought me to Nashville. But the main thing to me has always been the main thing. And I pray, as long as God allows me to still be in this season 25 years later, it's to go and minister to people through music. I'm not going to record just to record. Actually took a long break because it just didn't even make sense. I'm like, why put out a CD just to put out an album? And then when it did make sense again, I got in the writing room. I know there's different philosophies of that, but I didn't want to waste anybody's time. I didn't want to just write to write. I wanted to write with purpose. And God opened some new doors and a new project out a year ago. And here we are talking about music ministry versus the industry, which has to play a part. And I've been part of the industry and kind of in it, but I don't know. I've just always had a different heart towards it all, I guess, or focus towards it all.
Yeah. It's a really interesting conversation because I've worked with artists and even churches on both kind of extremes. One extreme is it's all about ministry and they don't have any idea how any of it works. And then they actually end up even not knowing how to collect royalties that they're actually owed. And part of that, I think the issue it causes is bad stewardship. And also sometimes like the people that lean extremely to the like this is all just ministry. Sometimes I hear them say things like, I'm just going to put out my music and God's going to just do whatever he wants and everybody in the world's going to hear it. I don't have to do anything once I put it out, you know?
Yeah.
And then the other extreme is this is all about business and money and fame.
And charts.
And, all, all the numbers.
Yeah.
So, like what's been kind of like stirring in your heart around all that?
Oh, well, I think I was such a new believer, and I think God protected me a lot because, we had a song that did really well and great at CCLI, and churches all over the world were singing it at the time, like 20 plus years ago. So there was a little bit of that, I guess, industry success. But I think it's, what do you mark success?
Yeah.
And my only fear is I don't want to get to heaven and be like, oh God, I chased and chased after this or that. And he's like, I just wanted you to go serve and sing to my people. So I've had to keep what I felt him speaking to me, the main thing, which might be different to another artist.
Yeah.
And sure, you're in the industry, especially if you're signed to a label. You have commitments, you have requirements. You can't just put an album out and sit at home. They're going to want you to tour. They're going to want you to be engaged on your social media. I mean, I started with MySpace and we built that thing up. Nobody even knows what MySpace is. Yeah. I'm like, great, now we're trying to build Instagram. What's next? You know? And it does feel a little bit like a rat race sometimes. And I think as believers and as creatives and as ministers, we have to really be careful that we are balancing it well, and that we don't get too focused on the industry. We don't get too focused on, like, I know it's artistry, but I think we have to remember who we're doing this for and what is your why. Like, if it's to be famous, I don't know. I wrestle. I personally would wrestle with that. Is it to help bring more people to Jesus? Okay. And is that the vehicle he's using through fame? Okay. Like I have those big questions a lot, I guess. So I just have to come back to what God has spoken to me, which is to sing songs of hope and to hopefully bring people closer to his heart through those songs. I try not to get involved in industry stuff. He's been so faithful to keep things alive with ministry bookings and, you know, a book and opening up other doors with other labels. And that's all him. I have never chased that. I have never focused on that. And even Centricity was just, but that's my makeup and my heart. I don't want to say that like the people that move here to town and are like chasing after it, that's bad, but I just would really like question the motives, I guess, a little bit. I'm just ministry through and through. You know what I mean? Like I want to meet the people that are at the event and how are they doing, and not just sign a CD and leave.
Yeah, I guess I see in the industry, the music industry, as basically, like you said, a vehicle or a tool to do the ministry. And it allows some of the infrastructure to be there to be able to release music, to be able to, you know, release your music on platforms like CCLI, multi-tracks, and make resources available for churches. And you mentioned that you had never like pursued, you know, labels and things like that. So, well, funny enough, like even today I got an email from a total stranger. I don't even know who they are. Basically saying, I have, you know, 30 plus songs and I want to get signed, you know, will you help me? And I get that like every week. And I guess the way that you entered into this industry, was it basically just from the owners of Centricity, like seeing you lead worship at the church?
It was. And I think it was just so God too, like putting that whole thing together. They had it on their heart to build a studio for their son-in-law in a specific way for his college thesis or something like that. I hope I have that exactly right. And so it was like all the pieces coming together, and they then needed someone to record. And, and they like believed in, I think, like the worship, the heart behind what I was doing, probably even more than like, oh, her voice or, I mean, I had no following. I don't, like I said, we didn't even have Instagram back then. So it's all been very business for me. And I know that's not everybody's story. And even now at this age, I mean, it would be so easy to like, there's that temptation to want to chase like, oh, I wish I had more Instagram followers. Oh, I wish I had more streams. Oh, I mean, I just got Spotify last year. This is how behind I am, you know, like.
Wait, what were you using before Spotify?
CDs.
Before last year?
Oh, like for me personally, for my music?
No, I mean like to listen to music.
Maybe iTunes, but mostly CDs.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. I'm so old fashioned.
I don't even have a CD player. I haven't had one in years.
I know. And it's like knowing your audience, like thank God these women's events I've been doing for the last good bit of time, like most women still.
They eat up the CDs.
They love it.
Yeah.
Will you sign it? Will you sign one for the, and it's like, sure. Like,
wow.
And that is going away though, because now it's like, oh, my new car doesn't have a CD player. And I'm like, oh, that's a bummer. Yeah. You can find me on Spotify. And then they're like, how do I do that? I'm like, I just learned a year ago. But I think like, yeah, it was a very much a God thing. And like, I've always felt like a pioneer. Like I got to help pioneer that for them. And I knew God was going to bless it because they took such a risk on me. And God has blessed it with amazing artists with great hearts and talent. And over there at Centricity Music, and the team there is phenomenal. Yeah. But yeah, I wish like people ask me that all the time. Like, well, how do I do it? How do I do it like you? And I'm like, well, I wasn't chasing it. Like I really wasn't. What I was chasing was more of God. And I knew I felt called to ministry, music ministry. So how do I steward that well? And in that season, it was leading worship at my local church. It was any gathering that wanted me to come, I would say yes to. I mean, now people are like, oh, well, are they going to pay you enough honorariums? I'm like, let's get back to the heart of why we do what we do. Back then I didn't even know or care. So it was just staying in my lane. Yeah. And that's what I like to encourage people with. Like, like staying in the lane that God has given us and being okay with that. And, some of my peers, they shot right to the top really quick, and it was amazing to watch that. Some of them are still in Christian music. Some of them aren't, and for various reasons, I've just kind of always stayed, and the Lord has kept things going.
Yeah. I feel like it's always better when God elevates you versus you trying to elevate yourself. Yeah. And this actually reminds me of one of my first podcast interviews I ever did, because I had a podcast a long time ago. It was called All About Worship Podcast when I was a worship leader. Yep. And
remember that.
One of my first interviewees was Carrie Job.
Love Carrie.
I literally interviewed her over the phone, like on speakerphone. And she was at her church at Gateway in Dallas. And one of the questions I asked her is, are you, what would you say to an artist, that's trying to pursue this music thing, record deals? Like, would you ever send out your music to labels? And she was like, no, I've never sent one out. I would never send music to labels. Like, I'm just going to let God do whatever he wants. And at that time, she was just putting out independent music and a couple of worship projects. And now, fast forward, God's done a lot, in her life through her ministry. Yeah. And there is such especially living in Nashville, there's such a chase of this pressure almost of I gotta elevate myself. I have to make myself known. And also at the same time, I guess, if you don't do that and you're just kind of hidden, people also feel like then, nobody will ever find out about me, but God has done that in so many cases, even in the Bible, God's done that with David and, so I guess how does an artist these days, because I think the challenge now too is because I grew up on MySpace, my original podcast was basically built on MySpace, building a community there.
And isn't that hard? I remember working with the label, that thing got built up. Like I had an impressive MySpace, right? And then we moved to Facebook, and that was doing okay. And like nobody would know that. Like current people that would go to Instagram now be like, oh, her numbers aren't whatever.
Yeah.
But it is a little bit fleeting. It's all a little fleeting because I mean it is going to go away. And there is going to be a new thing. Yeah. And I think what I loved about what you just shared with Carrie is her drive was not to be signed. And I mean, God has expanded her territory and reach so massively. And that's awesome. But you know what I love and know about Carrie? Even if it was like at a smaller level, let's say like the events I do, you know, maybe I have 1,000 women and she's filling up those arenas, right? I think they're filling up arenas. I think she would be the same Carrie in the arena that she is at the event with 1,000 women, 100 women, or 10 women. And that to me, she is a true minister of music. And I think she chased the right thing. I mean, I know her personally, and I've also heard interviews. She was in her closet worshiping with no one. Yeah. You know, like I really think sometimes we have it backwards here in this industry. And we put people on pedestals that, for whatever reason, whether it's through their label, their managers, their book, that they have had some worldly success here with the stats, with the, I don't even know the terms, charting and all that, streaming, all that. I just think it's going to look different. I don't think we're going to stand before Jesus and he's going to be like, well done, you had 5 number ones. Thank you for having a hit on Caleb. God bless you, Caleb. I love you. But like, I don't. I think the heart of God is, thank you for serving my people. Well done, good and faithful servant. Thank you for seeing that one woman in the front row when nobody else saw her and you knew she was going through something. Like, I just think sometimes we get it backwards and the temptation is there. Would I love to have more streams? Yes, of course. But like, is that going to be my focus, or is chasing the heart of God and doing what he said and being obedient to him? Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, I think the struggle for a lot of artists is that so much of what they do is public information now. Whereas, you know, back in the day, I mean, I actually used to do Christian hip hop back in high school and college, and nobody knew how many fans or followers I had or anything. It was like I literally had, my first album was a cassette tape, and then I had a couple of CDs. But now artists are like every day reminded, oh, your Instagram is not as big as this other artist. Your Spotify monthly listeners aren't as big as this one. Totally. And the industry, I mean, for business reasons, has to say like, no, we need you to hit these benchmarks before we can work with you or whatever, you know? So how do you, I guess, encourage young artists, because I know you love to, you know, pour into young artists, like to keep their heart pure in all of it and to really focus on the right things?
You just said it, to keep your heart pure. And I think the way we do that is to keep our focus on Christ. If we're in Christian music, in this genre, I think it's to make him known. And how do we do that? Well, we have to know him. So that's our first priority. And I challenge young people, like, are you in the Word? Are you in prayer? Are you talking to God? Are you hearing God? You know what I mean? Is that your first priority? And is everything you're doing coming out of that? If God says, I want you to sit back for a season, no more co-writes, no more chasing whatever, are you good with that? I really challenge them to like, what is God asking you to do right now? I was with a young artist, part of a band. We probably met together a dozen times. And finally, I can remember one time challenging her, what if you lay it all down? Because she was frustrated. This label's interested, then they're not. This manager's interested, then they're not. And I could feel it, that striving. That. And I said, what if you laid it all down? And she finally did. And God has put something tailor-made for her and that band together that only God could do. It's a little different than a traditional label thing, but she's getting the music out there. She's getting the message out there. They're going to be able to go do some tour dates. Everything she always wanted to do, but God's putting it together in his way and in his time. And that's what I would say to a young artist is, are you planted somewhere? got to be planted in good community, in a church where you have covering, where if you do grow, you've got a support system, number one. Number two, your walk with God. Like, are you pressing in? What is he asking you to do? You know, maybe he wants you to go sing at the nursing home. If you're I got to be on this tour. If you can't go do that, that's bad stewardship. If that's something God asks you to do. And Lord, I hope you don't ask me to do that, but I will. Like sitting here thinking, like we all have our things that would make us nervous, right? But what if God, like, you woke up tomorrow and he's like, Wisdom, I want you to go do this random thing. And you're like, would you still do it? That's the kind of life I want to live. I want to stay that surrendered and that yielded. Whereas if God was like, go to that local nursing home once a week and sing hymns. I think that's where true success comes from, is just listening to God and following his leadership. Yeah. Even in this town, which, there's so much pressure. You can't go into a coffee shop and not see someone in the industry. And sometimes you feel great, and sometimes they're like, oh, what do they think? You know? Yeah. And that's where I have to go back and be like, am I doing what you're asking me to do still? Okay, I am. I'm doing the tour you told me to be on. I'm recording when you tell me to. You told me to do a book. The book is kind of like being obedient to Jesus. That's what I would encourage a young person to do. Stay obedient. Yeah. If your folks want you to go to college, but you're like, no, I just want to pursue my dreams. There's something to honoring your parents. My parents really wanted me to get a college degree. Music degree, do you really need one? I don't know. But that was the path God put me on, and I honored that. Yeah. I think just staying faithful. I would say that to a young person. Stay faithful where you're planted and watch God grow you where you're at. And don't chase. Don't think that just because someone's up there, it's great. Or, like I used to do that all the time. And then I got to see some people that maybe I would think like, oh, I wish my ministry had taken off to that. And I get to know them or the pace they run. And I'm like, I would not have been able to handle that. That would have taken me out physically in so many ways. Yeah. The grass is always greener, right? We say that, but it really is. Like seeing where you're at and being happy with where God has you. Yeah. I think is really important. And then watch the divine connections too. I would say that to a young person. See who God puts in your path and how they use that. I remember sending a song to a friend because I really believed in it, to an A&R guy, and it's been successful. And like, you never know who God's going to put where, Yeah,
I think it's such a hard thing to, even for artists, to stop and go like, did God really tell me to pursue even artistry? Or am I supposed to just serve in my local church and be, I think
with that. And now churches all want to be labels and that's a whole nother topic. I'm like, okay, is every church a label and putting out music now? Like, okay,
Yeah, I think the hardest thing that I see with, artists, and I'm so glad, like, I don't feel called to be an artist because I love working on the business side of things, and I think being an artist these days is such a hard thing. And, when you're feeling called to be an artist, it's really, I think, difficult. And this, like, it's a tug of war to go like, okay, I have to be content and being hidden, at least for a season, That
hiddenness.
Yeah. And you don't know how long that's going to be. And especially, I think, for young female artists, there's an extra layer of pressure of like, well, what if I want to have a family? What if I want to, get married?
We were just talking about that. Yeah.
So like, how would you help female artists navigate this?
I wish I hadn't been quite so ministry career focused, because I think the Lord was opening up beautiful doors to travel and minister. And I think as a female, like, the role of a wife and a mother is so godly and so beautiful. And I still pray for that season. Lord, please don't let it tarry any longer. But once again, are you being obedient to God? And I can look back and say, I did feel like the Lord was saying to move forward and go on some of those tours. And there was a season, different seasons I've worked at churches, and way scaled back the road. and doing things I never dreamed I'd do. I mean, I learned how to be a new Christians pastor at one church. I learned how to run a guest services team, a prayer team, like, things that normally I'm up there playing and leading. It was so different. And I'm so grateful for those tools now. But even in that season, like, I had to take a step back and say, okay, God, this is so unfamiliar, and I just would be easier. And that's what I love. I just want to be up there to sing. And I remember he was like, no, time for something new. And that was hard. That there are moments that I was like, am I not good enough? Am I not, my name isn't big enough? That's why I'm not, had to wrestle with all of those things. I'm so grateful. I just did what he asked me and stayed obedient, because it was actually after that season that God kind of reopened the door to music again in a fresh, new way that I'm not sure would have happened had I pushed.
All right. Well, I'm going to blame one of our friends, Jonathan Mason, for, no, I'm just kidding.
He's my music publisher.
We're happy to have Jonathan Mason in the studio. He's been on our podcast, actually. He's one of the VPs of Curb Word, and he wanted to stop by. So hopefully he'll be like a filter for our conversation. If you want to jump in, let us know. Like he works with you as your publisher.
We go way back. We toured together when he was in a worship band.
Playing bass, right?
Playing bass in New England. Yeah. And awesome. We met at a GMA event I was speaking at, and I have had such a heart for New England, and I never got booked out there, maybe like twice a year for different events. And something came up, and he's like, oh yeah, we travel. They were traveling all around. And I was like, I want to be part of that. So I basically invited myself on a tour with his band, and he made it happen. And Jonathan's mom is to me like why I do what I do. Like, how we were talking about ministry, and you never know who your songs are going to reach. And just those people that genuinely listen to your music and get touched by it. And,
that's awesome.
We all have those people. Yeah. And so we connected, and then I had a new album coming out, and he's been helping publishing stuff.
I tell people Jonathan is one of my favorite people in Nashville.
Yeah.
And I feel like he just knows everybody.
Yes. Yeah.
Every time I mention them, they're like, I've known him forever.
Yeah.
So going back to like the conversation around even just the fact that you have a publisher, obviously like that is part of the industry, right?
Yeah.
And as an artist, what I guess led you to decide to sign with a publisher?
Because I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah, so that you can kind of like delegate that.
Yeah, especially when I had that album, the All Things album that came out in 2020. And, you just kind of want to try to do things right and honor writers. And I knew it would be great to get help on the business side of that kind of stuff.
One thing I've definitely talked to artists about is even if you're like very, ministry focused, you do have to navigate different aspects like booking. If somebody reaches out and wants to book you, that's a booking, role, and you can decide I'm going to be my own booking person, or I'm going to have somebody else help me and, delegate that responsibility.
Yeah.
To me, sometimes, because I've been on both sides.
Same.
Where I've been like the one to book artists. And,
oh, wow.
Yeah, be like a promoter, because I've put on different events over the years. And then I've worked closely with booking agencies. And to me, I've seen where even like having a publisher or a booking agent or a manager, it kind of helps you have a layer in between like you and the person that you're wanting to do ministry with, whether it's the church or whoever. And sometimes I think having the business conversation as an artist can get really awkward because they'll ask you, how much do you need? And what, all the accommodations you're looking for and things like that. So how do you typically navigate that?
I've navigated it both ways. So early in my career, I was with the Breen agency, now 25 and Live. And I think I got that right, 25 Live. And they were amazing, and they navigated all of those agreements. I also had a season where my manager was just doing that. And that was a busy season too. And it was just nice to have that buffer when we had enough incoming, where instead of 2 people taking a percent, we were in a season where it made sense. And so I had a great manager in that season. Then I went totally indie, had no label support, no publishing support, no manager support, no booking support. And I did it all. And that was tough because I wasn't great at the negotiating, but you kind of find tools like, here's the contract. And my heart is, I want to make this work. So if something in this contract does not work, let's have a diet. Let's talk about it. Yeah. And sometimes we would. And sometimes I'd go down on rates. Sometimes it would be better than I thought, like just kind of, and then I'm kind of in a happy medium right now where I had my last album called Sacred Surrender had an indie label and we had some consulting helping us make some big decisions with, that was great because it took it off of me. Yeah. And some booking agents in town will still throw me, which is so gracious, throw me dates, but I have been on a tour the last 3 years where it's consistent. Fall and spring where I book it straight through the promoter, basically. So that's been a real blessing and it's what I love. It's women's ministry. It's a women's event. It's like a 3-hour music song stories. It's the perfect fit. And I would encourage people with that. Like, don't just take a tour to take a tour. Don't just take a show to take a show. Is it what God's asking you to do? Is it like we came back to this, is it your lane? Like I would never get booked at a festival or never say never, but you know what I mean? I did them back in the day, but like knowing your sweet spot of ministry, I think is so important. And it makes so much more sense for me to be doing what I'm doing now than pushing to be on like what would be like a hot tour right now. I don't even know. What would be like a winter jam maybe or something. That would be so ridiculous. Me up there in my piano with my little soft worship songs, like it wouldn't make sense and it would never work anyways. I'm not even in that level or whatever. But like knowing what God's created you for and staying in that lane, it just brings joy to my heart. I'm not worried about, am I cool enough? Am I this enough? I'm like right where I'm supposed to be, So that I would encourage. But I think it's good for any young aspiring artists to try booking themselves, to have that. I think that's important. I did that. I can remember early on, like when churches, youth groups, because I was like 23 at the time, youth groups would book me. I'm like, okay, yes. Where are we going to stay? And, learning all that. Are you going to cover the transportation? Yeah. And how much is the honorarium? Because I got to pay my band and like learning all of that before you get to the level where you have a booking agent doing it. I think it's important.
So I have a question regarding, the DIY, approach that you've had to do versus like having a team. And I'm sure, in your 25 years, you've never had any bad experiences, in the industry, right? Looking back, what would you say maybe like is one of the biggest things that you would do differently? Like, I don't want to say regret, but, something that you might look back and go, oh, I wish I could have done that differently, and maybe help somebody else avoid that,
I wish I would have enjoyed more every season instead of what we were talking about, the chase, when you're always wanting more, or like, God bless me in the inspo lane, right? And there are some real successful years in that lane. But it was like, oh, but it's not AC. Oh, but it's not like, why? Because it's cooler to be AC. Like I look back now and I'm like, at this age, I could care less. Like, you know what I mean? And it's like, I was impacting people there. And that was going back to your why. My heart was to sing songs of hope and to bring peace to people when I sing, and to bring people into God's presence and offer, like those moments. And so I think I would have enjoyed every stage, every part of it, the hard days, the good days, then you get the Dove nom and you're like, this is it. And then you don't get the Dove Award. So you're like, well, now I really want to work at getting the Dove Award. Yeah. Well, is the nomination not enough? Like you're like, instead of always striving and wanting more. And I think it's just goes back to our walks with Christ, which we've talked about, like being content and who we are in him and where he has us, and enjoying it. Because I don't want to like turn 50 and still be striving. Like I want to enjoy everything God has done and realize that like the dream is coming true. Like I've gotten to do what I felt called to and make a okay living. And am I super famous? No, like, but I'm doing what God called me to do and being I guess I would say to that young person, like, be happy, be content, be joy-filled in every season because you're right where God wants you. And if it doesn't happen, that's okay too, because maybe he's protecting. And maybe like if it had happened the way you wanted it to, maybe it would have taken you out in some way. And God knows what we can withstand. And, and I would say make sure you take time for the things that really matter, your family, your friends, your community. This town can make you feel like you got to work 24/7. And like, how's your personal life? How's your, things we were talking about earlier, like fall in love young, take it from me, like that's important, and I would say make sure you're well-rounded, not just, focused on your career or your ministry or I would definitely, and some of the young women that I meet with now, I ask them, I'm like, are you dating? Are you like, how's your love life? Because I know how you can get in that. I'm putting out another album. I'm on another tour. And you just kind of forget in a way, or you just think it's just going to happen, and it can happen that way. But are you in church community still? Are you, those kinds of things.
Yeah. Do you think this industry is harder for female artists versus male artists?
I do. I've always wondered about that. I've seen many seasons, even with Christian radio, and I don't know the answer to this, but I've personally wondered, like, seasons where you barely hear females on the radio, and it's like all male, and then there'll be a season where you're hearing some more, and then we'll flip back. Like, I've noticed, I think it is harder in some ways for female. I think also just like the way God created us, like what we were just saying about being moms and wives, and it's hard to be on a road and be a mom and a wife, a good, and so I think there's that balance as well. Not to say that you can't do it. There's so many artists that have done it beautifully that I look up to. But I think it's a different role for a female, and we carry things differently than a guy would carry something.
So we were talking about the industry side and the ministry side, and in Nashville, this is kind of like where Christian music industry is. And, most of the labels and publishers are here, and booking agencies and management companies. What would you say to people that actually work on the business side of this industry? Because we have, people that listen who work in this industry who are also chasing their own dreams and goals within the business side of it.
Yeah. I've been so blessed in this area. I really have. I've worked with amazing people. And I think God knew, like, just the makeup of my heart. I'm a sensitive one. I'm a feeler. Like, I think he knew some things could take me out. And I've heard those horror stories. And thank God I haven't had that happen. I think the only thing I would say to the industry is sometimes I feel like we validate the people that on the outside have a lot more going, like they're on the bigger tours, or they have the millions and millions and millions of streams. Or I hope we remember, like, I can think of some artists that are doing just as much and are just as powerful in their ministry and anointing, but maybe don't have all that. I kind of wish we would remember that this is God's kingdom. It's a kingdom work, and it's not just like who's, you hear a lot, oh yeah, they're at the top, they're popping right now, or like you never really hear industry people say like, man, that concert 50 people responded to the altar call. That was powerful. Like I wish we could get back to more ministry side of it. And I know they work for the business, so they have to have money coming in, and I get that side of it, but I guess a perception shift sometimes. I think like what we validate or what we think is great, and like how are their lives, like, are business people checking in on their artist's character? lives, the way they live. I don't ever hear that kind of talk, or I just think we focus sometimes on the wrong things. Not in a bad place, but just it's like our nature, right?
Yeah.
To do that. And I would hope that we would want to make sure that that artist is doing well emotionally, mentally, physically, not just that they're got another number one.
Yeah. Yeah, I've thought about that and wrestled with that a lot over the years. And because, I mean, even on a strictly business side of like, if you're thinking about just on the business and revenue side of it, for a company that works with artists, the artist is typically the, most important asset that they have. But then if the artist isn't well and they're not healthy, then they can't have longevity in their career. So, yeah, I don't know what the solution is. I know there's organizations out there that provide free, counseling and things Porter's like that for artists. Yeah, which is amazing. But I think, it's almost like having those open conversations, even if the label or whoever can't be that person, checking in. That doesn't really cost anything, it's to check in with the person. Yeah. I think that is really important, and that is something that I don't think everybody, really thinks about.
And managers too, like of their artists, like recognizing this artist is burnt out, like they need a break. Like that would be wisdom to have them pause for a season. I think sometimes when things, for some of these young artists, when things pick up really fast, it's a little bit of a like, oh, we got to keep going while it's hot. And like, I don't know, I've seen people burn out. I've seen stuff happen with that.
Yeah. I want to ask you maybe a couple of like potentially controversial questions.
Oh, Lord.
I try to save these at the end.
Okay.
So one is, there's been a lot of controversy in the church world, in the Christian world, I guess, of artists charging a lot of money for their shows or worship concerts or whatever you want to call it.
Clearly, I'm not in that level, but keep going.
So, either that's where the artist is charging a pretty hefty honorarium, or maybe people are trying to buy tickets, and the tickets, the other day I was actually looking at tickets for a worship concert because my youngest was like really wanting to go to a live concert locally, and minimum it was like over $100 per ticket, and it was going up to over $300 per ticket. So I guess
this is for a worship night or a Christian music concert.
A worship night with a big artist,
like a worship leader.
So I guess what's your take on that? And
I wouldn't even know what the going rates are, because everything I have done is honorarium based, where the church or the promoter pays me an honorarium to come in, and I rarely even know, like even the tour I'm on right now, I don't think I know what a ticket is, which is really sad. I've been on this tour for a few years now. That's sad. You can see where I'm focused on different things. I don't know how to answer that, because I don't feel like I'm educated enough to know where the market is at and if that's right or not. But I would hope, this would be my prayer, if somebody really wanted to go and couldn't afford that, is there a place where people can get scholarship? Is there a place where, like, it would make me sad if like a new Christian really wanted to go hear so-and-so lead worship, and they went on there and like $150 ticket and they can't afford that and missed a moment in God's presence. Like maybe we need to think about ways, to sponsor people or scholarship people in so that they can get a ticket. That feels high to me. I mean, just like if I were to go buy a ticket to a concert, $150, I don't know.
And what's your approach, and what have you
surprised
seen?
me. I thought you were going to say like $50 or something. So I'm like, wow, okay.
I mean, I know a lot of times it's the venue or, the ticketing platform that charges a lot more.
But then I think about a pair of jeans I'll go buy at Nordstrom for way more than that. So it's like your priorities.
And do you think for artists that charge a set fee to go, play somewhere, like, is there a point where it's like, is this ministry, or, is it all
I
about
ask
money?
God that a lot. Because it's funny. Some churches, I'm like, you want to pay that much? Okay, wow, thank you, Lord. You know what I mean? And then other churches, it's kind of what I've been used to, or like, but I think, again, it goes back to, are you checking with the Lord? And I can remember specifically, one was a little lower than I was used to, but God was like, go. It's been one of my favorite ministry nights of my life. And had I said no, because it wasn't what I was used to making and an honorary, I would have missed out. So I think it's being obedient to God again, asking God, like, do you even want me to do? Just because a booking comes in, I turn down so many because I don't feel God on this at all. Like, I'm not just going to show up and sing somewhere to show up and sing somewhere. Like, I want to know that the Lord, or maybe our belief systems aren't quite, you got to be careful just because it's church. You might not line up with, that denomination or whatever and what they believe. I think it just goes back to going back to God and making sure you're staying in your lane and doing what you want and not being tight-fisted, but open-handed and surrendered. Yeah. And I have seen in seasons of much and in seasons of drought, the Lord always provides. When we put him first, when we have biblical principles in our lives with our finances, he will provide more than we can ever. If you do what he wants you to do and you stay tethered to him, you can provide. He will provide. He will provide for you. So I would say be flexible with that. Like, it would break my heart if an artist, like a big artist, like I know how they call them, like A artists now, said no to a church because they didn't get their set honorarium. I would challenge that artist. I would sit down and be like, do you wrestle still like with this, or has it just become a business to you now that you're like, nope, can't go because you won't pay me whatever they make? Like, I have heard what some artists make, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like, do they wrestle with God about that? But then you look at, they're paying huge teams. Yeah. They've got trucks out there. They've got multiple buses out there. It's the level is changed for them. So, they can't just show up for something way, way, way less. Yeah. Unless God tells them to do it, then I would say show up with your guitar, kill all the production, kill your 2 semis, and just go play and sing. And I would hope, if God told them to do that, they would do that, Yeah. Or go for free. I remember I was challenged once. Would you go sing for free? I'm like, wow, would I, God? Yeah, I need to still be in that place. Like, I would, or serve your local church. Don't get paid there, Yeah.
Wow. I think
now I want to know what concert that
was. You are giving a lot to think about. And, even for me, I'm like processing a lot of like what you're saying.
I'm a little different. I know not everyone would agree with all this. I'll say that. Like, I know for a lot of people, they're like, nope, you go, you get signed, you shoot for that number 1, you keep trying to get it. And
yeah, and actually, my next question, speaking of signing, is because you've, had a lot of different opportunities come your way, and some artists are just dying for one kind of record deal or something to come their way and be offered, and some artists in that situation may just jump at that opportunity and may not even like really know what they're getting themselves into. So what advice would you have for like how to, I guess, discern opportunities as an artist or songwriter? If you get a publishing deal or if a manager wants to work with you, like how would you advise somebody to discern that?
Yeah, I would say make sure it makes sense in that season. I loved when the situation worked out at Curb Word because I knew Jonathan Mason. And more than like his music stuff, I trust his character, who he is. I want to work with people that like get it and have good character and ministry and like to me. And I knew he got my ministry. I mean, I probably am like the smallest writer they have, which is fine. And but that was important to me. And the label I worked with on this last record, that was a total God gift kind of situation. Like, I didn't even go looking for that at all. And they are so kingdom focused. That's what I loved. It wasn't, I didn't want to get trapped in something where like, if it flops, it's, like they really were doing it for the kingdom. And in their eyes, success is seeing people hear that music and the stories I share with them. That's more important to them than how many albums we've sold. And that's very not this industry. And I'm aware of that. And it can make me cry, but I think God honored a bit of my heart in this industry the last 25 years of like, I laid it all down and he brought something around in a way that was totally genuine to my heart.
Yeah.
Because this industry can like stifle, I think, a lot of the why you do it. Like you can just be like, well, I never got the AC hit or I never, like there is that here. And I think it was a gift from God, the way he brought that situation around. I would just say stay so close to Jesus, like stay tethered to him, stay obedient to him. And he's going to do what's best in being okay with what happens and what doesn't happen at the end of the day. Yeah. Like I think I told you before this podcast, we're like trying for something that could be a total flop. And it kind of makes me so nervous. But finally, God was like, will you just surrender it and let it be what it's going to be? Like be excited for the little bit that might happen. And if nothing happens, that's okay. Like I finally had to get to that point where it's okay to try and it's okay to like put my faith back out there for something and just believe that, okay, God, whatever you want to happen in this area, let it be. And if it doesn't, okay, that sacred surrender, name of my book, name of the last album, like literally living in that surrendered place. Yeah.
And I think for somebody that's been doing this for a long time, like you don't seem jaded. And
maybe in one or two areas.
And I've talked to artists that have been signed to deals and stuff that are very jaded and they are very anti-label, anti-everything. And if you even bring up that you have a label, they're like, labels just want your money and they'll just take everything, own everything. And I don't think that's a healthy place as an artist or a creative. So what would you say to that person? And then I would love to have you share a little bit about your upcoming book and stuff too.
I'm a little jaded with some things in the industry. Like I've seen dear friends get hurt. I've been hurt by a few things. There's politics in any business, in any genre, it's in the Christian music industry as well. I have to guard that place because I feel like it affects who I am as a minister, as a worship leader. I think that's a real tricky place. And I don't want to sugarcoat it like everything's great in the Christian music industry. It's not. I'm not against labels if it's done the right way and if you feel like it's a God kingdom connection. And that's the only reason I would ever be a part of a label again is if I knew it was the Lord putting it together like he did this last season for me. I wouldn't want to work with another booking agent or manager unless I knew. Like I'm working with a manager right now just for a certain help with something. And it's seasonal and I needed it. And it's a great little fit, and it'll probably end in a few months. You know what I mean? But it was perfect for this. So I think, again, is God asking you to do that? It's obedience. It all goes back to obedience to Him. I hope I answered that right. Okay.
I think that's really good. I think it really comes down to like protecting your heart in all of this, and like if you're an artist pursuing this or if you work in the industry, like the industry is a part of it, it's a vehicle and you have to really protect your heart. And that takes a lot of intentionality.
Right.
So,
protect your heart. You just nailed it because everything we do comes out of that. And it can get shattered in this industry and protect your heart would be my number one. I love that you just said that.
And you hinted at a book.
I know.
So tell us about your book.
Oh my gosh, isn't God have a sense of humor? I can't believe he had me write a book. It's funny, that used to be prophesied over my life quite a bit. And I was like, no, I'm a musician. I'm a songwriter. academics, really? And God started speaking to me when I got sick with Lyme disease in 2019. There's a book in you. There's a book in you. And I'm like, I could barely even see straight in that season.
Wow.
And it was total divine providence. I had tried, isn't this funny? Going back to like when God wants you to do something, do it in his timing. I had gotten a proposal together, gotten a great agent. We shopped it. We got some deals. The agent was like, I'd wait. These aren't great. And then COVID hit and everything shut down, including book deals.
Yeah.
And so I just totally surrendered it. And a year later, I got an email from a pretty good publisher out in Colorado. Hey, have you ever thought about writing a book? I'm like, wow, that's so random. How did you even hear me? One of our editorial people love your ministry. Ever thought about it? I'm like, I have a proposal. I sent it to him. I got a deal within a week.
Wow.
Something in me, but no, this is where I was staying tethered to the heart of God. Something in me said, pause, wait. And I called a friend that I tour with, a speaker friend who also is a literary agent. I said, what should I do? Should I take this? Is this a good deal? I can't believe God's brought this around. I wasn't even looking for it. I had completely surrendered it. And she said, send me your proposal. She's like, do you still really want to write a book on this? I said, no, I think it would be more, I gave her what it is about. And she said, let's get a new proposal together. Well, she shops it and we get 2 offers, including the one that we had. And the Lord made it so clear. I went to coffee with someone right down the road here. And I just knew her heart for women's ministry and what this book is about. It was a shoo-in. And I'm so glad I didn't take that first offer, even though it looked flashy. I'm so glad I waited. I got the same offer, but with a better fit for my ministry, my heart, and for this book. And so, again, it goes back to what we're talking about. Like, God, do you want me to do this? Okay, pause. Why am I pausing? Call your literary agent friend. Okay, like that obedience, So it comes out October 3rd. I think I can say the title now. It's called Sacred Surrender, The Practice of Waiting Well with God.
Wow. I love that.
Yeah. It's about perseverance, patience, how to live a full life, even in some of the emptiest of places, how to live an abundant life when things don't go the way you thought they would go. How to find joy in the midst of sorrow, those kinds of topics.
Man, that's awesome.
Yeah. I hope you like it.
And how can people stay connected with you and book you and all that stuff?
Well, my website has all the information, my tour dates, jaimejam.com, Instagram, Facebook. I'm not on the Twitter. Not on the TikTok. No, I'm not on TikTok. I think I'm on Twitter. Yeah, I'm not on TikTok. Maybe one day.
Yeah, or it may go away. So we'll see.
As another God thing. Everyone's like, TikTok. I just felt a pause on that. So maybe I'll join it soon. We'll see. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being on this podcast. I think it's been just really encouraging and refreshing to hear your heart, and for especially, someone that's been in this for so long. And
I'm old. You can say it. You can say it.
That is not what I meant. But, somebody that is a great example of staying faithful as an artist and not pursuing fame and, chasing after the wrong things. And so, thank you just for your vulnerability and sharing your story.
Thanks for having me. I'm glad we were able to have an honest conversation around this. So thank you.